It's time to step into the Coming Out Lounge, a cool, safe space to be true to your sexual self. With your host, Rick Clemens. Rick has helped hundreds of people come out of the closet, and now each week he's bringing you cool insights for loving and accepting yourself, boosting your self-confidence, and living a guilt-free, purpose-filled life on the other side of the closet doors. Cuddle up with yourself and get ready for heartwarming coming out stories, ideas for living authentically, and tips for being fully self-expressed. Now here's your host, Coming Out Coach Rick.
Hey, Closet Busters. We are back once again with another episode of the Coming Out Lounge. I'm your host, Rick Clemens, the Coming Out Coach. And today we are back with part 2 with my friend Stephanie Poole. Stephanie is a male to female transgender, and we're going to kind of go back to where we were in the discussion with Stephanie. In the first episode, she shared her journey, her journey at that time as we were talking about stuff, to this really monumental change of finally finding herself at age 50 and having gone through 3 marriages and raising children. She's finally come to that juncture where living the lie just wasn't who she was meant to be. And she's been living as a woman, coming into her truth completely now. She's also moving towards one of the biggest shifts in this journey, though, in just a few weeks. And that's why we kind of stopped where we were in the last episode. And we want to go step into the final frontier with her. And so what are we talking about today? Well, we're kind of talking about the snip, snip, tuck, tuck, and exactly what's going on, how you feel about these sort of things, and just kind of going places. Because I know Stephanie will do this. Stephanie will, really be truthful and really honest about where we're going. So we're going to go explore that, and we're going to welcome my friend Stephanie Poole back to the Coming Out Lounge. Hey, Stephanie, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you? Hi, everybody.
Hey, we're back and we're so excited. So, let's just kind of, we talked about your marriages. We talked about some of the challenges with, kids and family and things such as that. But as we got through all that, we didn't really get to where you are in the journey. And I know for a lot of people who may be exploring and finding themselves in their transgender life, or others who just want to understand this so they can be better, more well-informed and educated individuals, which in this day and age, we really need a whole lot more of after this most recent election, as we all see. But so let's just kind of gingerly step into this. Let's start back with, as we start into, these closets of discovering who we are, you've really started to see who you were. What you saw in the mirror was completely different from what you felt inside. Kind of take a step by step, what starts to happen when you finally say, okay, I'm going to do this transition. I know personally that, it usually starts with some pretty deep conversations with some therapists and psychologists, correct?
That is correct. First, I want to apologize to the listeners that I'm just getting over a cold, so my voice might be a little rough, and there's a reason I ran myself down and got this cold, too, that I'll also get to in a minute.
Yep.
And, last program I gave a group of analogies about what it was like to have the onset of this transition. And then as soon as it started moving forward, I knew that this is happening. Once I came to the realization that this is happening, I knew that I needed to find help. I knew that I needed to find other people like me, and I needed to learn about the process of transitioning. So I was living in San Diego at the time, and I found the local LGBT center, and it probably took me a good month and a half to get up enough courage to actually show my uber masculine face and facade and go in there and say, hey, I'm a girl in here. It was very scary, but
it must have been something that, as you said, here's this uber masculine guy. And I would invite anybody who's listening to this, especially the guys, to think about how scary it seems to be yourself, and then to know that you're really not who you are. Now, I know as a gay man, that's part of the struggle that I've had, but we're talking something completely different here, where you inside are conflicted and there's something completely different. And as you just so beautifully said, hey, there's a girl inside here wanting to be who she is. It's got to be really, truly scary.
Oh, yeah. It was horrifying. Going through my entire life feeling so trapped. I mentioned at 19, that article that came out about Tallulah, and I was so angry at the world, and at that point of my life, I just thought that I was going to be trapped this way for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. But when I finally reached my breaking point and the transition moved forward, I found that LGBT center, and I somehow found the courage to go in there and meet with the director of transgender services, and they set me up with a list of support groups, and I started attending a coming out support group, a transgender coming out group, and it was very helpful. From there, I knew that I needed to find therapists and endocrinologists, and so I got a referral to a therapist, and I came out to my family doctor. And I told him, and from there I got a referral to a endocrinologist.
Right.
And after a few sessions of meeting with my therapist, it was obvious that gender dysphoria is the official diagnosis.
Sure.
It was very apparent to her that that was the diagnosis, and she wrote a letter, and I took that to. There's a lot of documentation involved,
right.
And so I took that information to the endocrinologist, and the endocrinologist, basically did like a little interview and said, hey, how long have you felt this way? Have you seen a therapist? Where do you want to go with this? How persistent is it? And he prescribed me hormones, and from there, it was putting a plan in place. And by a plan, there was a lot of things to do, a big checklist.
Right.
And you've got to come out. That's one of the biggest things of it. And coming out to friends, families, coworkers, colleagues, and basically everyone. And I had to put that in place and work that plan.
This is interesting because it's actually something that I talk to clients that I'm working with who are coming out as gay or lesbian, that there's a plan that we're going to put in place, and they're kind of like, okay, this seems kind of formal. I'm like, no, it's not really formal, but we don't just go do this. There's like some steps that we go through in order to make things transition as smoothly as possible. And I don't mean just transition with other people, but within ourselves. The better your plan is, the more, I believe, the more alive you're going to feel, the more comfortable you're going to be as you take these monumental steps. And it sounds like that's exactly why they have a plan in place when you go through the transgender journey. Otherwise, you would probably drive yourself batty, quite honestly.
Exactly. And I think I spoke about some of the girls and trans guys too, but I've been primarily around trans girls and can relate to that a lot better, so I'll refer to that. But
sure.
I met so many girls that got stuck in the victim mode, and they didn't have a plan, they didn't have a checklist, and they didn't work down that list of things that you need to do to have a successful transition.
Right.
And then there's different measures of, when am I done?
Right.
And that's kind of maybe a good segue into.
Well, it is. I think it is. But it's also, I want to come back a couple of steps just to make sure that, whoever's listening, we've got some good stuff. So I want to make sure that, one thing that I know before I became much more educated myself was, wow, so as somebody starts to go through this, as soon as they discovered this, do they just suddenly like, okay, now I start dressing like the sex that I believe I am? And I've heard lots of varying stories. Some people say, no, there's still time that, it takes to kind of start the transition. So in your case, when did you actually, in the journey, start to, really manifest yourself as a woman? Was it as soon as you like, oh, I discovered this, now let's go do this? Or did you give yourself a little bit of space?
Well, obviously, that awesome term closet, I was in that closet, and being a woman at home and even online. And when my transition started moving forward, I knew that Stephanie was going to have to come out and see the light of day, see the real world. And the groups were a great place. They were supposed to be your safe place to be able to come and express your...
Right.
So when I first started going to the meetings, there were a couple of things, and this may sound silly to anyone listening, but once you hear me out, then maybe some of it will make sense. But a couple of things that were very important for me to have confidence in presenting myself as female. One was hair. Mm-hmm. My hair, when I started transition, was cut with a number 2 and a number 3 razor. Mm-hmm. So it was very, very short. So, I really wanted to have hair. Yep. And I couldn't wait to grow it out, and it couldn't grow out fast enough. Yep. So hair was one. Finding clothes that fit me properly and fit my body type, those were important. Mm-hmm. Cleavage was very important, and I knew there was going to be a while before breasts started to develop on hormones. But so I think at the time hair was super important. Mm-hmm. So I would show up the first few times. The first time I went to the meeting, I showed up as completely male, presenting completely male. Mm-hmm. And that was awkward in and of itself because I wanted to go in there and just be me. And I wasn't comfortable. And some of the girls go to the LGBT center and they change there. They go to the meeting and then they change back before they leave. And so I kind of eased into it. I would maybe wear a pink tank top under my button-down shirt, and when I got there, take off my button-down shirt. Mm-hmm. So there were several meetings that I went to over the course of a couple of months that, I just kind of expressed my feminine side with, some feminine clothing. But I really didn't present completely female until, about 3 or 4 months in. I went to a professional wig maker, and she had a private studio in her home she really started this for cancer patients, and she specialized in wigs for cancer patients and transgender girls. So she had a private studio in her home, and she would do a private wig fitting with you and do customization. She would have one member of her staff there. And I went over to her home on a Saturday afternoon and was fitted for a very expensive professional wig that was custom tailored to me. We picked the color, the style, and they customized it. So once I had my hair, it was time to go out into public. Mm-hmm. And I had mentors. I had a couple of really good mentors and very close friends, trans girls. And we would go out after the meetings, sometimes as a group. Everybody would go in a safe LGBT community down there in San Diego. The name is Hillcrest. Yeah. And so we would all go out after our Monday night meeting and all go to a restaurant. And so that got me some exposure out in public. And then I had my mentor, who I call my sister. We've kind of adopted each other as sisters. Mm-hmm. We were roommates for a while, right on the onset of my transition. And she would take me thrift store shopping. So the big thing was to go out on the weekends and go thrift store shopping. And one of the things that was really a shocker was the first time I went out into public dressed as a female with my wig and everything. I had this vision in my head that the world was going to come to a screeching halt. That record scratch sound. Right. You're going to hear that record scratch and the world was just going to stop and all eyes would be on me and people pointing and laughing and staring. And I remember emerging from my apartment scared to death and nothing happened. Nobody.
That's amazing.
Nobody cared. Nobody looked. People that did look just went about their business, and it was really no big deal. And I'm thinking, why was I so scared?
But I think this is the typical closet experience, whether you're coming out as transgender or gay or lesbian, or you're coming out of the closet to say, I don't want to be in this job anymore, or coming out of the closet to say this relationship isn't working. A lot of times that it's that thing we think is going to happen that doesn't happen. Other stuff might, but I think it's our initial fear of, what's going to happen is what keeps us so stuck. In fact, one of the things I work with clients a lot on is a very simple thing around fear. Fear is in the future. It's that simple.
Yeah, you build things up in your head and you feel that anxiety and then you do it to yourself. You really do.
So I'm curious, and I'm sure some of the people listening are curious too. So those first few times of being fully self-expressed, everything from learning how to do your makeup to catching yourself maybe, you know, going, okay, was that too masculine or was that not feminine enough? I mean, all these things are like almost like learning to walk again, I would think.
Well, here's the thing, and I think we touched on it, but I don't think I elaborated. You know, on the onset of puberty, I think I mentioned I had a brother. He'd always punch me in the arm. And so what I had to do is I had to observe male behavior, and I had to learn how to walk like a guy, talk like a guy, act like a guy, do the things a guy would do, treat women the way a guy would treat girls. It was very uncomfortable. I had to teach myself that. I had to learn it. And I had to fake being a boy, being a man, being a guy all my life. It was a big facade. Yep. I had to stifle my, you know, femininity and my feminine movements and articulations. And you know, so when I finally was free of all that, it wasn't so much learning new stuff as it was trying to forget old behaviors. It's like, it's okay to swing your hips when you walk a little bit. You're supposed to. You're a girl now. You can walk like a girl. You are a girl. You know, you can have the feminine mannerisms. And so...
It sounds like it was a lot of just reawakening what was already there.
Exactly. It's like, let's activate this. Let's wake it up. Let's not only do it when we're in the closet. Let's, you know, this is how we're supposed to be now. From now on, it's okay to be like this. And I still catch myself sometimes, you know, with masculine movements because, you know, I lived 50 years with doing things the masculine way and trying to portray that. So, and I have friends sometimes that kind of tip me off. They say, hey, Steffi, you know, I noticed the other day when you did this, it kind of look masculine.
But that's part of who we are as humans too. I mean, I know myself, you know, a lot of people don't realize I'm a gay guy until they've been around me a little bit, or until I tell them a lot of times, you know, until I say, hey, I'm gay, you know. But I think it's that piece where, you know, there are moments that I know when I have mannerisms and stuff that I let my, you know, much more softer feminine side show up. And then there's other times where I'm like, I'm just a big bruiser, you know. So I think we sometimes get too caught up in, okay, that's a little masculine or that's a little feminine, but it's because of what we've been told all of our lives. Plain and simple.
Yes, exactly. And also, I've been around a lot of women who are a lot more masculine than I am. And, you know, and it's like nobody would tell them that or think to themselves that, hey, she walks like a guy.
Right.
Because they didn't, you know, but with me, I have certain friends, they knew that I used to be a guy, I used to be in male form. So when they see that, that's what clicks in their mind. It's like, well, you know, it is some lingering behaviors. But
so speaking of male form, we're on the, I hate to say the final frontier because I think there's so many things that happen, you know, for all of us throughout life, but you're about to embark on the final part of the frontier, right?
Yeah, and this goes back to what I was saying about, you know, how complete do you want to be? When are you done? And even if I could never take the next step, I feel like I'm done. I'm there. So anything I do beyond where I'm at now is just a bonus. So with that, the point I'm at with the transition now is, I don't remember if I mentioned this in the last episode, but about 1 year after I started my transition, you know, I had my legal change, and it was about 1 month after that I had my testicles removed. But I still have a penis. I still have all the tissue down there. And now what I am about to embark on is my final bottom surgery. I'm going to get the kitty installed, as I like to say.
I love that. I love that. That's a great way to put it. The kitty installed. So let's kind of talk about a little bit about the steps there, because I'm sure some people are curious. So why have the testicles removed at that point and then move forward at this point? Is it just the steps they take? Is it, you know, for some people, this is the direction they go? Because I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, you go do this, and they just cut the whole thing off, they refabricate, and boom, we're done. I think a lot of people just would like to know, what are the steps that happen here?
Well, there are a lot of transgender girls that are completely happy with penis and testicles. Some girls, once they get the testicles removed, they feel complete enough. In my case, I was fortunate enough to have good insurance that covered removing the testicles, and I was allergic to the testosterone blockers that they give you. So I was happy to get those little guys removed.
Gotcha.
Anything that I could do to become more feminine and less male. And that was my goal, because I didn't know if and when I would ever get to the point that I'm at today.
Right.
But in a little less than a week is when I'm going in for my final surgery. So the steps involved, getting the testicles pre-removed the way I did is completely optional. But most doctors require, I don't know what the acronym stands for, I don't recall off the top of my head, but the WPATH, W-P-A-T-H, and sometimes they call it the WPATH. It's basically a standards of care for transgendered people. And they have certain guidelines, certain criteria that need to be fulfilled before you have surgery. And for example, I have 2 therapists. They have each written a letter giving information such as diagnosis and such as, how long they've been seeing me, and background on how long my gender dysphoria has persisted. It also has information about how long I've been living as a female. And if you follow the WPATH, I think it's a minimum of 1 year in your preferred, the gender in which you identify as. And so there's a list of criteria that need to be met there. Once that's met, I had a consultation with the surgeon that I chose, which is Dr. Toby Meltzer in Scottsdale, Arizona. I think he is one of the best in the U.S. I know there are some really great surgeons in Canada and other places abroad. But as far as inside the U.S., I believe Dr. Meltzer is the best, one of the best, if not the best. And he's definitely the one for me.
Cool. And I think that's probably important, right? Is finding the one that works best for you. I don't think this is like, anybody can just go do this. I think there's got to be a connection. There's got to be a deep understanding. There's got to be someone that you feel very comfortable with, I would assume.
Exactly. It's not like, hey, I need to have a bone spur removed from my shoulder. I need a tendon fixed on my elbow or, it's not anything like that. I mean, this is pretty much a one-time shot. And, I wanted to go with somebody who had a great track record of both being anatomically correct, the aesthetics of it, and functionality. Because when this is all done, you have a functioning vagina. You have a little bit of an auto-lubricating. You are fully sensate and able to orgasm, and everything will function. There's a lot of maintenance involved. So I had a consultation 1.5 years ago, and this date was set back then. So we're coming up on it now. It's a little over a week away.
Awesome. And
backtracking to a couple of weeks ago, it was probably about a week after we talked for part 1 of this. And I believe you said part 1's going to air on December 16th. And now we're probably, by the time this airs, that's already happened. December 16th will actually be 2 weeks after my surgery. It will be the day I get home after my recovery in Scottsdale. So by the time you hear this, everybody, everything will be done and life will be good. But, backing up.
We'll be a week past. So actually, you will have been recovering and everything. So this is awesome.
Yeah. But at the 3-week mark, just before the 3-week mark, my surgery is going to be on a Tuesday. So a couple of weekends ago, I went over to Lake Havasu, Arizona to visit my dad and had an awesome visit with him. And my daughter that weekend told me that she was pregnant, so I was going to be a grandmother.
Wow.
And I think we mentioned in the last episode that my son kind of disowned me a few months ago. Now, my daughter has been okay, but struggling with things. So that weekend, she tells me that she's pregnant and I'm going to be a grandmother. I use the term grandmother. She did not, because that's one of the things she's struggling with, is who I am to her and, her family that she's now going to start raising.
Right.
2 days after that, which was the Tuesday, which was exactly 3 weeks before my surgery, when I start all my pre-op measures. Mm-hmm. And she told me she couldn't have a relationship with me right now, and that maybe someday we could, but right now she just can't have a relationship with me. So that was kind of devastating.
Yep.
And 2 days after that, my dad, who has had a history of strokes, heart attacks, mini strokes, had a quadruple bypass, aortic valve replacement. He's about to turn 94. He had a stroke and he fell. So the last weekend I went over to see him and visit him and stay in the hospital with him. And so I got like a double whammy, triple whammy there over the course of the last week. Yeah, and I got run down, and on the day I left to go see my dad, I came down with a cold. And so I got to spend a few days with him in the hospital, and now he's in a skilled nursing facility and working on getting stronger and getting better, so hopefully he can go home. And Thanksgiving, we're at the tail end of the Thanksgiving weekend here, and I had some family come stay with me, and we went to Disneyland. And so, trying to get myself back on an even keel, back to center, so I can still go through with surgery, which will be a week from this coming Tuesday. So it's...
What are you most looking forward to post-surgery?
Being able to pull up my panties and not have an appendage hanging there and not have to worry about what am I, doing something with that thing.
Right. That's awesome.
That is going to be so amazing. And also being able to pull up pants, my skinny jeans, and not have to worry about.
Yeah. Where's everything tucked in?
Yeah. And what does it look like? Did I get it right? Does it feel right? Does it look right? And so, just the amazing feeling of not having anything externally is going to be so amazing. If it's not too graphic, I can explain how they do the surgery. Yeah,
sure. Let's do that real quick before we wrap it up, because I just love that you're willing to share this. And I know a lot of people have never been able to hear how this all happened. Even in this day and age, I know there's plenty of videos out there and stuff but I think sometimes it's the human side of this, having somebody really just share the human experience of, what they do. So it's totally cool. Share away.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I've already had my testicles removed, and the way they did that was they put a single incision down the center, vertical incision down the center of the sac. But if you haven't had the testicles removed, they basically dissect it down the front. You're the penis down the front and the sac down the front. They remove the testicles, and they remove all of the erectile tissue from the penis, and they cut the urethra off and reposition it shorter and where it is on a genetic female. They open up a cavity inside of you, and all the penile tissue and all the scrotal tissue and everything tucks inside. Well, they remove the head tissue. The head tissue gets relocated to be your clitoris. The rest of the tissue gets tucked inside. So all the nerve endings stay intact, and after about 5 days, they have you all filled with packing.
Right.
And then the cavity is filled with packing. After about 5 days, they remove the packing, and then you start a dilation process where you have to keep the vagina, the depth and the width dilated. So you dilate several times a day to start out. And then after you recover for about 3 weeks, then they come back and split the labia to give you a labia majora and a labia minora. And they also they'd make an incision and pull skin together over your clit to give you a clitoral hood. There's a lot of surgeons that do all of this in one procedure, but Dr. Meltzer does it in a 2-part procedure. And I just finished about a week ago, I finished the last session of electrolysis to remove all the hair from that area, because you don't want hair growing inside your vagina.
Sure.
So that was a very painful process.
I've heard that many, many times, not only there, but also on the facial part too. It's like just a really painful thing. So
Yeah, definitely. And I haven't done much on the face yet.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm, usually you have that done before you start living full time as a female. So
Right.
I'm going to have to let my facial hair grow out a little bit and start that process. But that'll be a month or two after surgery when I'm rested and healed and, got all my strength back. So.
Well, I just want to say you have been more than generous with sharing your journey and with sharing the ins and outs of everything. And I'm so happy for you that you are taking yet another step to just really being who you are and being the person you're meant to be in this world.
Thank you.
And before we leave, I just, I want to say that given everything that's transpired in the last couple of months, we're going to be here in middle of December, so we'll be 6 weeks post-election, 5 weeks post-election as this podcast is airing, and
Yes.
there's a lot of just strife. I guess that would be the way I would describe it right now.
Yeah.
And it just saddens my heart that much of what's going on right now is simply because we don't allow each other. We truly don't allow each other to be who we are.
Yeah, that is sad.
And as I've watched everything unfold and I've done a lot of inner journey stuff on myself, and then having you here on the show just brought it forward again to why do we get so caught up in what somebody else is doing with their life? And I know I do it too, because I've sat in the weeks post-election and got on my bandwagon a few times with people, and I step back and go, but wait, Rick, if you're one of those voices who says everybody has a right to be exactly who they are, then I need to give people some room to do that too, within reason. There's a caveat I always put on that statement. As long as you're not physically or emotionally hurting another human being, then everyone is in that realm of being who they are. But I think this is the very epitome of allowing someone to be themselves. Every inch of their body is theirs to do with what they choose to do with. Yeah. And I don't believe this is a choice. I don't want anybody to mistake those words I just spoke about, choosing to do with what you want to do with, because this is as much of an internal knowing as it is knowing what your sexual orientation is. It just happens to be that our transgender brothers and sisters have had to fight at such deeper levels with who they really are, because the physical manifestation is even worse to have to deal with than just the thought of knowing, hey, I'm attracted to men or women. And I just want to say you have just modeled what it truly means, Stephanie, to be yourself over the last couple of episodes. And I really, really, truly thank you for being part of this and sharing yourself the way that you have.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I love sharing. So
that's awesome.
Anytime you want to do it again.
Yeah, and it really shines through. And yeah, we probably will. We'll probably have you come back on in a few months after you've been fully living in the means that you're meant to be and being in the body that you're meant to be in. So
that'd be awesome.
Yeah. And if you've enjoyed this show, I'm going to invite you to just, take some time, go give us a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you hear us. But more than anything, rather than asking for a great review, I just want you to sit and reflect. Reflect on who you're being, who you're meant to be, and where you're denying yourself that beautiful space of being exactly who you are. And with that, we're going to wrap it up as we always do on the Coming Out Lounge with our little mantra of stepping out, stepping up, and stepping in to being your powerful truth. I'm Rick Clemens, the Coming Out Coach, and we will catch you in just a couple more days. Take care, everyone. Hey, Closet Dwellers and Coming Out Lounge listeners. I wanted to ask you a question. If you could take stress out of your journey, be more content in who you are, and find ways to do some of the most difficult things that you need to do as you come through the closet doors, would you do it? I bet the answer is yes. Why do I know this? Because I have been getting requests from listeners and clients or prospective clients about finding ways to just address certain things in their coming out journey. Some people don't want to work for a long time, and I totally get that. And that's why I've designed some brand new coming out coaching one-on-one sessions. These are very focused, topic-specific sessions. For example, maybe you're looking at coming out midlife and how do you do it? Could be that you're already out, but you're not completely out and you want to talk about how do I do this and come out at work. Could be that you're having trouble even accepting yourself as a gay person. And might there be a possibility that you're really struggling with your sexuality and your religion? Depending on what you're looking for, I've designed 9 powerful, highly focused one-on-one laser coaching sessions that you can choose from. Each session goes for 90 minutes. We stay specifically focused on the topic at hand. And each of these sessions also includes a copy of my book, Frankly, My Dear, I'm Gay. So now that you've heard about this, how would you like to go check them out? Well, here's how you do this. Go to thecomingoutcoach.com. On that page, you can scroll down. You'll see stuff for the book and for some other offerings, but then you'll see one-on-one coaching sessions. Click on that button, and it will take you to a page that describes each of the 9 offerings that I have. If you happen to be listening to the podcast right now, just look over to the right-hand side of the show page, and you'll see one-on-one coaching sessions right there. Again, just click on that button and go check out these new offerings. So, what do you think? Isn't it about time that you stepped out, you stepped up, and you stepped into resolving whatever the biggest issue is in your coming out journey? I'm Rick Clemens, the Coming Out Coach, and I can't wait to work with you one-on-one.
You've just experienced the Coming Out Lounge. Go online to www.comingoutlounge.com to learn more, and tune in again next week for more stories and tips for being true to yourself.